Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Cheers
Yeah,
to this.
Absolutely.
We're here at the brand new hotel. We've been. How long has this been open now?
The first heads and beds were in July,
Okay.
so not too long.
Cool. It's exciting. We're November, so a couple months. We're here. Jim, you're kind of a legend in Atlanta commercial real estate. You're a very humble guy.
Lord help us.
Yeah. Been through a lot. I don't know if you want to give kind of a high level of your story. Started Jamestown, worked on a project next door to Ponce City Market here in Atlanta, and then that evolved into a greater project. Give us high level. Who's Jim Irwin and the marks that you made on Atlanta?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the story starts in 2010 when I was hired by Jamestown to manage the redevelopment of what is now called Ponce City Market, and I love the interview that you did with Francis. What an amazing story of transformation there. But that was really a great labor of love for 6 years. I love the story that she told about loft office space, and the brokerage community coming in and saying, there is no such thing as Class A loft office space. And just what a transformation that was, not just in that project, but really in the mentality of the entire city. And so I was anxious to continue that journey of transformation and of sort of rethinking of what Atlanta could be, and had an opportunity to work with Kroger to acquire the land immediately across the Beltline. Cool. And with Jamestown's blessing, I, with a lot of trepidation and fear and trembling, leapt out, hung a shingle with my colleague Maitland Thompson, and together we started New City in 2016 and took on that project. And unlike Ponce, which we wanted to save every single brick, this one, needed a full facelift, and so we demoed the building, and again, that one of the fun markers over my career. I've learned to love when people, say, like, Jim, you're crazy. Like, you're crazy. I don't understand this. And I usually know that, like, that's like a tuning fork to know that I might be onto something. But in this case with 725 Ponce, it was, what do you mean you're going to build Class A office space on the Beltline? Because remember, this was like still very in the early days, and then and then you're going to put it on top of a grocery store. Like, really? Yeah.
And how old were you at the time? You're like pretty young for that kind of role to play developer.
Yeah. I started New City when I was 36 years old. But I think had the extreme privilege of what felt like 30 years of experience, working at Jamestown on such a complicated, detailed project like that. And I tell people all the time, like, it was an incredible privilege to be able to focus on one deal and just making it really, really great. Yeah. That is a rare luxury in the world of development, to be able to just focus solely on one big thing for that long. Yeah. And so that was a great gift that Jamestown gave me personally.
Yeah. What were you doing before Ponce?
I started, after I graduated from college, I worked on Capitol Hill for almost 5 years. Okay. And then moved home to Atlanta. I grew up here. Yeah. Moved home to go to business school at Emory. Wow. And then the very, very first project I ever worked on, I was hired as an intern by a company that's not around anymore called Berry Real Estate. Yep. And worked on a minor league baseball stadium in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Okay. So that was like my first deal out of the gate.
So Capitol Hill to Emory to baseball stadium to Ponce. Mm-hmm. Wow. And then to the rest of the developments that are coming forth and all that. Cool. Okay, so 725. When did that open? Was that 2018, 2019?
It did, yeah. Okay. So construction sort of took through 2018. Okay. And then I think the timing was amazing because we were able to lease up the entire building in a year.
Yeah, and then you sold it to Cousins for the record, what was it, $750 a foot?
A little bit more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so 725 gets leased up. When do you start getting this? Okay, let's go a little further down the Beltline. There's a big chunk of land over here.
Yeah, so the story's even crazier than that because we weren't done with construction when the RFP for this Georgia Power site came to, when it was released.
Wow.
Obviously, I had tried to stay very close to Georgia Power. They bought this land that we're now sitting on in 1977, and at the time, this was just hundreds and hundreds of acres of just industrial land, storage facilities, concrete yards, and it was
Wow.
really nothing here other than City Hall East and the Ford factory, and so it was like a last mile station. So they had tons and tons of trucks and transformers and just training yards, and it was kind of a place that they could just sort of park everything.
Yeah. Do they still have a plot of land over here, or is that Sunbelt Rentals has some?
Sunbelt Reynolds, and it's just right across.
Okay, got it.
Ralph
It's like the
McGill
last
over there.
glimpse of what that kind of this area looked like.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was just, obviously a huge transformation happened kind of overnight.
Yeah.
Georgia Power, being a responsible corporate citizen, said we're sort of in the way, if you will. All of this activity has come up around the Beltline, and it was still this kind of fenced in bunker almost, and so they said we feel like the right thing to do is to actually put it back in the hands of the community. And what they done ahead of time, before the RFQ came out, is actually meet with neighborhood leaders very diligently over the course of several months, and what they had, the unilateral feedback that they'd gotten is, we want more, architecture, we want more character, we don't want, all these
the copy paste,
the cut and paste stuff that had been happening.
Yeah.
The living's great.
Yeah.
But they wanted some more iconic things.
Sure.
And they had said, sort of in passing, we love Ponce City Market and 725 Ponce.
Yeah. They're like, we want more Jim.
Well, I think they just wanted more thoughtful intervention. And so, so flashback, we're about halfway done with construction on 725.
Yeah.
This RFQ comes out, and Maitland and I and one other person, so New City has a company of 3 people, and we're kind of scratching our heads. Frankly, I had wished that it had come out a couple of years later at the time because of how busy we were. Yeah. And
you're probably thinking, are we about to take on, this is a way bigger project, and do we have the bandwidth and all those?
Well, we weren't. We're all competitive people, so it's we're just rolling up our sleeves. And what I had wished is that we had a little bit more of a track record, because we haven't signed any leases yet.
Wow.
And when this comes out, and so I would love to have said this is a successful turnkey. We can actually begin and end the project.
Yeah. Here's our resume, but the resume was filling in.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. The track record was still pretty shallow. But
so how long was that RFQ process from when they sent it out? About a year? Or?
It took so there were 4 rounds of interviews, and fortunately, another great just happy accident really is that I had been introduced to an amazing family in Chicago who had called just for a reference check for one of the architects that I'd worked with in the past, and one of the family members had said, "Hey Jim, what else are you working on?" And he had actually heard about this project, and said, I'd said we're just starting to look at the RFQ just come out a week before. Wow. And he said, why don't we work on that together? And I was sort of
sure.
Okay. Yeah, great. So it was, and it turns out that they've been a tremendous partner going on now. What is that? 8 years. So
Yeah.
it's been well. So back to the story. We went through 4 rounds of interviews. I don't know how many interested parties there were, but I know it was in the neighborhood of like 50. I've heard.
Wow.
You know, big, giant national companies, because obviously
Yeah.
you know, it's a desirable piece of property.
Sure.
And, but they just kept hanging in there and kept hanging in there, and ultimately, you know, they it just in a what feels still like a miracle today. You know, they chose New City to take it on, and the rest is history.
Yeah. So that was 2017,
And then we so it kind of creeped into 2018.
Yeah.
And we ultimately, you know, and one of the important facts of that transaction is that Georgia Power was adamant that we actually closed the property before it was owned. So that was a significant factor and required a lot of trust from our partners.
Yeah, in the city, and are we going to be able to do this? Okay, so we're 2024 now. So it's about 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and since then we have 3 new projects. We're here in 4th, the hotel. So we have apartments next door, and then the office building. And I hear there's maybe another phase coming.
There is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So part of to fulfill the promise of this site, you know, I really one of the things that I think we all feel intuitively, and I think anyone in commercial real estate we really know is one of the greatest things about Atlanta is that it is incredibly it is a great place to do business, right? It's a business-friendly city. It's fast-moving. We're scrappy. We're hungry. We're very, very good at doing things fast. But from a built environment perspective, we haven't always done things very well. Architecture is not something that we are known for as a city.
Yeah,
and
we're known for tearing down the good architecture.
Right. Well, we're known for speed and efficiency and I mean you know just how quickly the Midtown skyline has changed is an indication of both what a great city it is and also like how fast things move.
Yeah.
And so the thesis for this site was like, you know, great legacy cities have great architecture. And so, you know, I think we have reached this point of inflection in our city where, you know, the sophistication of businesses justify the amount of rent that would justify iconic international architecture. And so I love Olson Kundig's work. My mom is actually from Portland, Oregon, and so I kind of have a little bit of Pacific Northwest DNA in me, and been a huge fan of theirs. They're based in Seattle, and part of the idea with hiring them for the Beltline or the project that is as close to the Beltline as the whole thing is we've got this kind of like cool, moody, industrial, gritty nature of the Beltline. You know, it's this kind of mix of, you know, with 725, you know, exposed concrete, like brutalism was sort of the move to go right next to the old red brick of Ponce. And Olson Kundig is known for the like black steel and doing this like super moody. You think of like Pearl Jam type buildings in Seattle. And they had done one. They just finished one at the time in South Korea.
Okay.
That was in the fashion district out there. That was like stunning, like absolutely stunning. And I really thought that would go well on the Beltline because what the last thing the Beltline needs is like a slick blue glass cereal box type project.
Yeah. Well, you knocked it out of the park. It's a cool looking building.
Thank you.
It just
Well,
like
they
a
did.
spaceship.
They did. Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then so that was great fun. With this building, the fourth and the overline behind us, another architect that I've been a huge fan of is Morris Adjmi, who's based in New York. Probably one of the most iconic projects that he's done is this like twisted steel building on the High Line in the meatpacking district, the Samsung building. And I remember walking the High Line in like 2017 and being like, I've got to find whoever did that. That is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And through friends being connected to Morris. And,
yeah, did a project.
Yeah,
that's great.
did too.
Yeah. That's great. They're amazing projects. One of the things that was brought up to me from people that know you well is your attention to detail. Like something that was pointed out was this office building over here, instead of putting the lobby maybe right where people are parking, kind of the front of the building, you put it on the Beltline, so it's more inviting to people that are walking back and forth. I don't know if you want to talk to any of that, maybe your different approach to seeing buildings and how people interact with them. And you talked a lot about the architecture itself, but I don't know if you want to talk any further on just kind of that approach and people-centric and just taking a different approach than traditional developers too.
Yeah, I think I oftentimes begin tours of particularly the office space by saying, imagine a world where you actually like going to work every day. And I think that is the incredible privilege and responsibility of the developer is to really be responsible with the projects, because if you think about it, this is where people will spend the vast majority of their time.
Yeah.
And they'll spend more time each day in these buildings than they will with their family and friends, and so to me the fun is like how do you create an alignment where you can actually find that sort of harmonic tuning fork with how people, what their people's personal priorities are, and actually how they spend their time every day, because that is so fractured in our culture now. You think of just the amount of time people have to spend in places that don't make them feel good, and so I like to take that a step further and say it's not just about like enjoying your colleagues or those sort of microaggressions that you think of. Like think of that pothole that you hit every morning. That it's just kind of a bummer, There's little things, just micro things, and if we can instead turn that on its head and say like, have these little moments of surprise and delight and awe. By the time you actually sit down at your desk with a cup of coffee, you're in that much better mood. Your health is just a little improved. Your headspace is better. Yeah. You're that much more creative. Yeah. And fortunately, in a post-COVID world today, companies are realizing we have got to figure out a way to get people back to work, because we're more productive as a company. We're more collaborative. The esprit de corps is stronger. And so we are finding companies anywhere from 1,500 square feet to 1 million square feet plus that are saying like, we can't just like jam people in normal buildings anymore. We have to like find something else. Yeah. So
to inspire.
Yeah,
that's cool. Okay, so we've covered Atlanta. You have Neuhoff up in Nashville. Do you want to tell us the story of how you acquired that property? I've heard there was 2 sisters or something. And
there's a family, and the short version of the story is it's a legacy family project. One member of their family, a guy named Stephen McRedmond, had a vision for basically turning it into a community hub for the city. Now keep in mind, for those of your viewers who haven't seen or heard of Neuhoff, it was a slaughterhouse that was built in 1906. The operations had ceased in the late 70s, and it had basically sat abandoned since then. And so, the story is that the family members who had inherited the building, including Stephen, had been fighting all along to keep it, intact and to find someone to redevelop it. And they'd been approached by, they say over 200 developers trying to buy the property. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting. It's right on the river. The skyline of Nashville sort of pans out, just not unlike this in front of you.
Yeah.
And but they hadn't ever found anyone who would be willing to or knew how to save it. And so a mutual friend was meeting with them, and they said, "Gosh, we wish we could just find whoever did Ponce City Market and get them to come."
Like, I know the guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's his cell phone.
That's it.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
he called me, and again, it was about the exact same time that we were just starting to work on this.
Really? Okay.
And so, of course, I'm just drinking from 18 fire hoses at the time, and
Yeah.
he said, "Jim, I know you're busy, but you got to come. I'm not asking, I'm telling."
Wow.
And I trust him. He's a great friend, and I went up and met the family and crawled around the building for a couple hours, and he knew I would fall in love with it, and I did. But I had no aim on Nashville. It was more just the story about falling in love with the building and what it could be, and that began another great adventure.
Wow. And so, visiting the property, we were talking about this a little before we went on. So I was told you showed up with maybe a headlamp, a flashlight. It was just you and some boots, and just kind of went searching around for a couple hours. And
just literally crawling around the building. The slaughterhouse is a 5-story brick structure. One section that had been used as sort of like the smoke area, like where they would smoke meats, was so burned out that I leaned up against the building, and all 5 stories start to like wobble.
Wow.
And it was like, I'm not sure that's gonna stand up. I mean, it was wild.
Can you save this? Like, it's
But then I just remember crawling around the building. There's about a foot of standing water in the basement, and you're crawling all over like 70s era like hot dog wrappers that are melting. And we later found out, months later, that there was like a 9-foot python that had been like swimming around in the basement for years,
just hanging out.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So it was just a wild place.
What was your reaction when did they call you and say, "Hey, Jim, we found a 9-foot snake down here"?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I would have gone just pale. Or like,
Now,
just dodged a bullet.
the longer I'm in this business of like adaptive reuse and saving old structures, to
find some stuff.
You some pretty nutty stories,
Yeah. Okay, so Neuhoff, that's open now.
Yeah, the first phase is open.
Okay.
That is about 400,000 square feet of office space.
Okay.
542 residential units, and about 50,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor, walkable. Our hope is that it will become Nashville's Ponce City Market, in that it will be like that great community gathering space. And fortunately, so that project, both J.P. Morgan and Cousins are our partners, which I'm super proud of.
Cool.
And we've leased a little bit over half of the total office square footage, almost all of the office space in the historic building.
Cool.
We just had our first residential move-ins a few months ago, and I think we're in the middle of lease up now, and Sid and Ann Mashburn actually just opened our first retail store a couple weeks ago. So that's awesome. Happening like right in real time.
Wow, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the world has been in this development world has been in a kind of roller coaster cycle here.
Sure.
I don't know what's next. Have other projects kind of been put on ice from the interest rate? Projects not penciling. What's next after Neuhoff? Or I'm sure you have people calling you now and saying, "Hey, come take a look at this." And,
So the great thing about all of these projects is that they have many phases. The Fourth Ward project we're here sitting in. Actually, we're really at halftime now. If you think about it, we have 3 more buildings to go. 2 more apartment towers that we're working with a Berlin-based architect to design, and a 3rd office tower that Olson Kundig designed. That's just under 400,000 square feet, which will be a tremendous, we hope, build a suit opportunity. It has, again, direct Beltline connections, and that 3rd tower is going to be super special, just because it's right behind 3 Tree Hill and has its own kind of dedicated little path out to the Beltline, so folks can bike to work, and it's going to be really neat.
Do you know what rates you're quoting on that building?
Not quite yet. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
What's interesting though is it not as much as you would think, because the great thing is that we've already done 2 towers, and so a lot of the risk of the uncertainty has been eliminated. So
cool. Okay.
So we're really our cost basis is fully baked, and so it's we're excited to start talking about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you think timing is for this next phase? It just kind of depends. You got to get an office user to
It's just under 2 years of construction once we get started, but the great news is that the design's done, and we can start tomorrow.
Sure. Okay, switching gears a bit. What's your take on where we're at in development, Atlanta development? I mean, this has been a commercial real estate development city. It's kind of a part of the lore here. There aren't too many. You don't fit the normal mold of a gunslinger developer, but we've had the John Portmans, and we've got a handful of others that have really made their mark on the city. Like, what's your take on where development is now, and where do you think we're heading? I know, like, you're really breaking the mold of avoiding all this institutional cut and paste kind of development. I don't know. I'd be curious to get your take on where things stand.
Yeah. I think what really excites me are opportunities to really build places for people, and I think what I've found comes, particularly in the context of office, is when you first think about the individual people, and you think about the experience that you'll get every day, and again, this coming back to this idea of like alignment between the way people want to live and actually how they spend their time. What ends up happening is you actually build a really great place for office space, because in this battle for recruitment and retention, what savvy companies realize is they can actually align their own brand with the place, and it becomes easier to actually recruit the all-stars from Georgia Tech and everywhere else, and keep them happy.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of always trying to. I don't necessarily. From a development perspective, it's always like I'm trying to find ways to integrate nature. It's not just like I don't want to ever call it like the amenity battle, or the things that we all talk about. For me, again, it's how can we be slightly creative, more interesting, tell a great story? What's the narrative about innovation, technology, but also just more than anything else, like creating like real, actual, analog experiences for human beings to actually enjoy spending time there. And so that was really the idea with the Fourth, is it was kind of like the last key element that was sort of missing here in the Fourth Ward is a really great boutique hotel. And I would argue that really we haven't seen a really great one-of-one special place like this in Atlanta in a long, long time.
Yeah, and you just mentioned we're #1 on TripAdvisor now.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Atlanta.
that's pretty wild, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But I realized, you know, a few years ago, a really good friend mentioned to me, she said, like, Jim, you know, you talk about like office buildings using the language of hospitality. And so, you know, do you think you'll ever develop a hotel? And I was like, no. But now that we're here sitting in one, it's like, I think gravity was just really pulling us in this direction, because what this is like, it's an amazing tool to be able to go to our amazing partners and tenants in the projects and say, like, you know, this is just one more arrow in your quiver when you're hosting your clients, to be able to bring them into a beautiful club, put them up in a great place, and experience a great meal, be taken care of, and so it's a really neat sort of partnership.
Got it. Cool. Well, great, man. What else should we know about Jim Irwin? Who's Jim outside of making buildings happen? And I don't know, what are you into outside of development?
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest thing, my wife and I have 3 amazing kids, and who are 17, 15, and 12 right now. They're all crazy athletes, and so we spend a lot of time on lacrosse fields up and down the mid-Atlantic, which is not something that I ever knew about until my kids came along.
Until you're in it.
Yeah, it's wild. And love, you know, just love being outside, fishing, and being with friends.
Cool. That's awesome. Hey guys, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Jim. If you or a company that you know is looking for a place that they are excited to work at, people are trying to figure out where they work now more than ever. We're in this post-COVID world. People are coming in a couple of days a week, and we're going to go to an office. I want to be excited about where I'm going. So today was just a glimpse of some of the exciting projects that are here in Atlanta that we can help you find. So yeah, if that applies to you, feel free to reach out to any of the channels that we post this content on. And again, thanks for tuning in. We'll have more content for you soon.